Hi there, welcome to Libertarian Ramblings. I'm Luke Easterman, aka Gravis Man. I'm here to talk to you today about probably one of the most radical ideas that I've ever had. This is something that I've been preaching for a year or two now, but it's something I thought I'd put out online, partially because I was inspired by an article I read recently on rideless.com, and partially just because this is a crazy enough idea that it should be on the internet. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm going to link up a story at the underneath this video. That's down there. Yeah. Um, from rideless.com. It's called "Protect Your Rights. Know How to Deal with the Police If You Get Pulled Over." Um, what I'm talking about doesn't have really anything to do with dealing with the police, but they make a very interesting point in this article, and that is the writer says, and I quote, "Unfortunately, police enjoy a monopoly on protection. They're the only game in town, so they aren't pressured by the forces of the free market to make their customers happy. Police can generally act however they want and do whatever they please, and we have to keep paying them to protect us. It's an unfortunate situation, but until we live in a world with competing police services, where we can choose protection companies like we choose our cell phone provider, then we have to deal with it. So remember your rights and don't give in to police intimidation." Okay, so rideless.com makes a very, very good point here about police monopoly, and how we could potentially have things better if there was some competition over who got to police us, and who we were paying for our protection services. Um, but what I think, well, what this reminded me of is my thought that really what this is pointing out is the monopoly on government that governments hold, that any government holds. Anywhere in the world, there you go, there is a government that is holding a monopoly over governance in that area. And we all sort of accept it as natural because it was presented to us that way when we were born in, and who's to question such a thing? But I think when you get down to the core of the situation, it really doesn't make sense that just because I happen to be born between the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean and the Northern Hemisphere, uh, in the place that we call the United States, that means I have to be a citizen of the United States and, have all the responsibilities that go with that, including, I pay, probably in excess of $30,000 a year in taxes. Whoa. And, I pay that simply because I'm here and I was born here, so they said, okay, you're part of our government and you have to contribute. Well, that's not really ethical because I didn't get to choose where I was born. And you can't then force upon me, based on the location of my birth, a citizenry in a government and imposition of my entire life by the mob. The government is a mob, especially democratic government. And that mob basically claimed me when I was born and said, "We own you, and unless you physically run away to somewhere else in the world, we always will own you." That's just the way it is. It's essentially a kidnapping from birth. Um, so one of the problems here is that even if I do run away, I'm just going to end up being claimed by another mob, which is one of the problems with the main counter argument that people would give to me. When I complain about it being unethical for the government to claim me as a citizen at birth, people will say, "Well, that's okay Because if you don't like the United States, if you don't like our government, you can move. Well, that's a really shitty argument. Um, because as I just pointed out, if what if I don't like any government? Maybe what if I don't like the idea of being a part of a government at all? I don't want to be a citizen. Um, that becomes very difficult. It's almost impossible to just move and not be a part of any government. It just doesn't. That's not the way this world works. Um, and even beyond that, it's still pretty ridiculous to say, we control this vast, thousands of miles piece of land, and we understand that you were born here, and you didn't have a choice to be born here, but if you don't like our rules, you can't even live here. You got to get the hell out of here. Um, for something that comprises the amount of space as a country, especially this country, it's a very large country, that just doesn't make sense. A city could maybe pull that kind of logic off. Hey, you can move to another city if you don't like our our rules, but a country the size of the United States to say you have to leave this entire area if you don't agree with our mob and everything that we've decided to impose on you, that's just not ethical. You can never sell that to me as something that ethically makes sense. We impose these thousands of rules that we decided upon before you were born on you from birth, and we're allowed to do that because there's more of us than you, and how we can put you in jail if you don't like it. Doesn't make sense. So clearly, the real problem here that we need to overcome is the pervasive idea that governments get to have territories. That's been ingrained to us since from birth, but if we get rid of that idea, which is really just an assumption that can be thrown away like any other assumption, then we find there are a lot of other possibilities, and some of the ethical constraints of governance can be thrown out the window. So my thought is, let's do away with the idea that a government owns an entire territory and actually allow governments to compete on a free market. And that is, what they're competing for is citizens. And, with citizens come taxes and things like that. So governments on a free market would have a definite incentive to be good governments and gain citizens and thereby gain money and build themselves a bigger mob. We can sort of imagine this world where instead of political parties competing for control over one government, people that have different ideas can start a new government. In the same way that now, if somebody has a great new idea for a business or for a product, they can start a new business. Maybe they go to the executive board of the company that they work for and they propose their product.